Well, there's one element of the nuclear crisis, which may not even be a crisis, that is constantly emphasized, that dominates discussion. That's the possibility that Iran might develop nuclear weapons. There's a new nuclear posture review, Obama's signature statement on nuclear posture, and he gave speeches about it. There's a ton of coverage, and what he said, and interestingly, there was no comment, is that we have to stop proliferation. Very important to stop proliferation. He said the U.S. says for the first time that it won't bomb, it won't attack states with nuclear weapons if they're signers of the Non-Proliferation Treaty and doing all the right things. But we reserve the right to attack the outliers, as he called them, the two outliers, North Korea and Iran, who are refusing to accept the Non-Proliferation Treaty and its obligations. Well, the fact of the matter is there are three states that have never signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty, Israel, India, and Pakistan. They all have nuclear weapons. Now, we've helped them develop the nuclear weapons. I mean, in Pakistan, it's Reagan basically said, okay, develop nuclear weapons. Israel, enough to talk about. In the case of India, it's the last couple of years, the Anglo-U.S.-Indian treaty, which essentially authorizes India to develop nuclear weapons and will help them. They don't say it that way, but that's what it comes down to. You read the small print. Well, here's three. These states are really dangerous. I mean, India and Pakistan have come very close to nuclear war a couple of times. The problems still remain, might happen again. Israel, again, I don't have to mention, it's obvious. They're an aggressive, violent state. They're threatening war, constantly threatening war. They're alone in the region and not wanting to, we don't know about Iran, and to eliminate the threat of war. Last October, I guess, September, the Security Council passed a resolution, 1887, calling on all states to join the Non-Proliferation Treaty, live up to its obligations, overcome their conflicts within the framework of the Non-Proliferation Treaty and the UN Charter, which, if anybody cares, bans the threat of force. Now, the threat of force is across the spectrum of the United States. Every political figure who wants to appear in public has to say, yeah, we threaten force. The phrase that's used is all options are open, so we'll do whatever we like. This was depicted as a victory for Obama and kind of the world is against Iran. Well, there are two countries that are threatening force, Israel and the United States. Nobody else is. So it's directed against them. Israel refuses to sign the Non-Proliferation Treaty. U.S. backs it. In fact, right at the same time, India responded to this. I don't know if they responded. A couple of days after the Security Council resolution, India announced that it now has developed nuclear weapons to such a scale that it can produce weapons of the same yield as the superpowers, the United States and Russia. That's pretty dangerous. If India does it, Pakistan's got to do it. They have to try to match them. At the same time, the International Atomic Energy Agency passed a resolution calling on Israel to join the Non-Proliferation Treaty and to open up its facilities to inspection. Well, how'd the U.S. react to all of this? The U.S. immediately informed India that the resolution didn't apply to it. Obama informed Israel that it can disregard the International Atomic Energy Agency resolution. How did the media deal with this? Actually, I checked. The International Atomic Energy Agency report was reported in the United States in the Washington Times. It was reported.
The Mooney conservative newspaper in Washington.
Which nobody reads. You read for sports or something. But nothing else in the United States. Obama's informing Israel that they're immune. Again, the Washington Times. It was in the Irish Times, wasn't it? I don't think it was even in the British press. It's just not important. And Europe had tried to block the resolution. They failed. But we don't talk about it.
I dare say I take no pleasure in the fact that just what you said on this show probably is the most awareness that the Americans will get.
In fact, do you know where I found out about it?
Where?
I happened to be in Mexico for a couple of days giving talks. And I read it in the Mexican press. It was an AP report, meaning everybody had it.
Yeah, including any American newspaper.
Every newspaper editor had it. The Indian one on India, I read in the Financial Times, the British business newspaper. What did Obama do? Well, right at about the same time they got the Nobel Prize, which is right around that time, the Pentagon announced that it's going to deploy what are called massive ordnance penetrators, bunker busters they're called, the biggest bomb in the arsenal outside of nuclear weapons, 13 tons, which are supposed to go through thousands of feet of reinforced concrete and so on. I mean, they're aimed at Iran. Everybody knows it. So they're going to start deploying them. I'm not sure that was reported in the U.S. And it goes on. Actually, the program was initiated under Bush, but it kind of lagged. They didn't put much attention into it. As soon as Obama came into office, he authorized acceleration of the program. And in fact, they're being deployed a couple of years early. It continues. Just a couple of weeks ago, the Navy announced that the U.S. is sending bunker busters to Diego Garcia. Diego Garcia is an island in the Indian Ocean that the U.S. The British was a British colony. The U.S. told the British get rid of the population, so they kicked them all out, and they built a big military base there. It's one of the main bases for bombing Central Asia and Middle East and so on. So it's regularly used. It's also a base for nuclear weapons. In fact, the Navy also, what the Navy just announced is that Obama's setting bunker busters there. That's a major threat against Iran, and intended for that. Mm-hmm. The Navy also announced that they're sending submarine tenders to take care of nuclear submarines. Nuclear submarines means also carrying nuclear weapons, which are, they destroy half the world. They're all being sent to Diego Garcia. Obama announced he didn't announce, but the Pentagon announced that they're accelerating delivery of them for the world. It's for Iranian ears, but it's not for American ears. So here's the outlier, Iran. Maybe they're developing nuclear weapons capability. Nobody knows. I wouldn't be surprised, but nobody knows for sure. Meanwhile, you've got countries that have huge nuclear arsenals, that are very threatening, that are frightening everybody in the region, but they're not outliers. Mm-hmm. Try to find some discussion of this. It's worse than this. Let's go back to Diego Garcia, which is never discussed. One of the ways, if you're really interested in cutting down proliferation, you can have, fancy rhetoric like Obama, or you can do something. One of the things you can do is establish nuclear weapons-free zones. Doesn't solve the whole problem, but it's a step towards mitigating the problem and leading to further steps. Well, it's being done, but in quite interesting ways, which also don't get reported. The African Union, after several years of negotiation, did establish a nuclear weapons-free zone, almost. The U.S. won't agree. And the reason the U.S. won't agree is it covers Diego Garcia, and we got to keep that as a nuclear weapons base. So the African Union, they can protest, but it's going to do them a lot of good.
Yeah.
I didn't check, but I doubt if there's a word about that here. There's also a nuclear weapons-free zone in the South Pacific. Same flaw. The U.S. won't allow the Pacific Islands to be included because it uses them for nuclear submarines, probably storage of nuclear weapons and so on. So that one can't really go into effect. But the most significant one, which I don't think is ever discussed, is the Middle East. If you think there's a threat from Iran, right or wrong, a step towards mitigating it, maybe eliminating it, would be establishing a nuclear weapons-free zone in the Middle East.